Thank you. How much time do you spend internally, I guess, advocating on behalf of the end user within an organization that may be resistant to actually implementing some of the ideas that you may have, or some of the things you absolutely know need to be done, that maybe times have changed. So how much time do you spend actually advocating on behalf of the consumer as a UX person?
I mean, I think it depends on the project. There's a thing called management-centered design, right? Which is like, I don't want you to talk to my people because I'm going to tell you what they need. And I think like on certain apps, and I'll give you a specific example. So, you can do a day in the life with a lot of the users if it's available. And I think in most corporate enterprise user experience, which essentially is you're saying it's not going to the consumer, the masses, but you can have, there's a certain aspect of UX deliverables about building personas and building this kind of typical user, but there's a lot of systems, and I think a lot of the work that's done inside the Beltway, it's like the 20 people that are going to use it. So I worked for some big regulatory agencies in a previous life that, they had 20 operators running a system that handled $200 million in revenue. And there were two kind of interviews that happened when you talk to users, because users, there's kind of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, right? As soon as you sit something down to study it, you don't get the expected results. And I got two kinds of responses when we did these day in the life. The first was, hey, I have no problems. Everything's great. And you kind of get behind that and you realize, well, there's a certain, compensation aspect to this person's job that's based on complex system flows that if they change, they're gonna have to relearn, and they may not do as many, whatever it was before that they were supposed to do. And then there's the second type, which is, well, here's everything I hate about my job, And so users don't always tell the truth. And I think one of the things that's hard in trying to, give lip service to user-centered design is there's the antithesis on the other side of saying, well, users don't know what they want at all. And unless you're structuring those conversations in a way to get the answers that you need, and a lot of times, the metrics by which success is judged, and I'll give you an example. So we had an application that required certain things to be edited and done on a per-minute basis. And so if you weren't aware of the business metric that defines success, the person would tell you, I don't like that I have 2 minutes to do this. I should actually have more time to finish this and do it with better quality. But from the business goal for that business unit, it's, look, if they don't do, if it takes longer than a minute to do each one of these types of workflows in the system, then we're losing money. And it's a matter of kind of being able to understand those levels of goals and needs and frame it in a way that you don't just end up chasing a lot of conversations around. I think managing, the bigger the project is or the bigger the user base is, there's a lot of challenges to getting good data, specifically user-centered data.
Cool. Anything to add, Tony?
I was just going to say, I've spent probably a better part of my career as a UX guy providing education.
Right.
And the biggest aspect is I've literally, I came up here from Miami about 18 months ago or so for a 3-year engagement for Amtrak. Now, you would think that Amtrak would have this nationwide network display of these screens, and it would look like NASA when you walked in, of every mile of track and every train. Yeah, it doesn't exist. So beware. If you're going, northeast, you're fine. Going to Montana, different story. They literally don't know where you're at every 30 minutes because that's when the train reports where it was, not where it currently is. But basically what happened is the first day on the job at 10 G Street, we were walking in Union Station for lunch, had a great lunch with the team, here's who we are, came back, and the lead programmer goes, what does a UX guy do, and why do we need you? Wow. That's like getting hit with a 2x4 in the face. So now I got to educate the only guy on my team, much less the client, that felt that we needed us there. A lot of times you'll have executives that are ingrained in their position, that have been doing it for so long, that have been there for 20 years, that they're kind of, I don't want to say set in their ways, but it really takes a lot of effort for you to kind of turn on the light bulb to really explain what user experience is going to do for them and how it equates to the business model and how it's going to value proposition. You start to roll all those aspects in. And the best part, honestly, of my job is really when I can turn that light bulb on over their head, even if it's just very dim. And when it goes ding, I'm kind of like, I got them. I know that I've got in the door in their head that they kind of somewhat understand what user experience is. But I'm sure the rest of the panel would probably say is a lot of the time it's education of exactly what we bring to the table and all the different flavors, and really what we provide is the value for them to either work with us or hire us.
Just to get a sense, with regards to mobile, what's your experience level for iPhone, iOS versus Android versus other platforms? You guys all about 50-50, or are you predominant in any one particular platform?
From a user experience perspective?
Well, I know you guys basically hit all platforms. I mean, that's kind of one of your value propositions.
Well,
correct?
so I think there's, think of it this way, the number of apps that are just out there in general in terms of the number of companies that are getting mobile is geometric now, year over year, which means that we're talking to a lot of companies that are in different points in the life cycle. We're talking to folks that have sat on the sidelines and waited and said, hey, should we do, native? Should we do this HTML5 thing? Because it's what all the, people are talking about. And there's a lot of folks that we talk out of doing HTML5. I think from a corporate perspective, and I think I alluded to this earlier, there's a certain benchmark you get by building a native app. Like, you know what it took your team to just take whatever it is you did before and put it on one platform, whether it's iPhone or whether it's Android. Companies that we talk to that are in more the mobile workforce place, and really it's almost like a economic demographic fragmentation. Essentially, iPhone is like a BMW, and Android is like a Camry. I mean, if you talk to companies that
Somebody tweet that, please.
Mobile workforce, a new Camry.
Still not a BMW.
Don't insult my car now, too.
I drive an Android. I drive an Android. Just so you know.
Millions of people that can't afford Camrys, so.
Right.
I mean, my point is that there are folks that we talk to that are very sophisticated clients, or have very sophisticated customers, however you want to see it, and they want a very high-end experience, and market share isn't necessarily an issue per se. Again, like the more platforms you support, the more market share. I think an interesting thing, and we could maybe talk about this a little bit, is you look at what's happening with iOS 5, and you see if you're working with both. So we spent a lot of time with Android specific to like custom launcher applications. And so you know how people talk about jailbreaking your iPhone? People implicitly know that the user experience from iPhone is coming from Apple. And on Android, there can be many third-party players that create a custom user experience that sits on top of Android. But a lot of carriers are afraid to adopt that because they feel like we don't want to change something that people will reject to. And there's just different conventions and metaphors, right? I mean, obviously the Android device has that back button and other things that, make people, yes, I mean, I hope that wasn't recorded, I don't know. But there's just other peculiarities of the user experience. But there's also things that are good, but they're not as designed well from a visual design perspective as an Apple. And if you think about the notification bar in Android, right, that doesn't exist in iPhone, right? You get these stupid pop-ups. And I always get them when I'm trying to end a call, and I get a text message, and the person hears me going like, expletive, 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 because I have to submit these things. And you see now in iOS 5, they're adopting the push notifications to make it more Android-like. And so there's some kind of harmonization that's happening. I always felt, I've been a Mac guy for a long time, but I don't know what the green button does in the upper left corner. Sometimes it makes the window full screen, sometimes it shrinks the window down. And to me, there's a certain aspect of user experience, brand war, that's a carryover from the desktop days where Windows had things in the top right, so Mac's gonna have them in the top left. Why? Because Steve Jobs says so, right? Not because there's any user research data to support top left is better. And I think with the phone, we're kind of seeing that harmonization. For us as a user experience challenge trying to do mobile web, is there's a couple different themes. There's okay, I just want to copy an iPhone theme. There's I just want to copy an Android theme. And then there's someone saying, well, can you kind of give me the like middle of the road thing? And it's like, well, no, So I mean, again, to your question about kind of designing for mobile UX, I mean, there are peculiarities that are platform specific, meaning the application metaphor on an Android phone where you have the notion of icon, right? And even if you look at it Windows 9 or Windows Mobile, you have the notion of widget or tile, then you have full screen application, then you have interactions therein with the operating system. That are event-based, so like the push notifications. And you can look at how that paradigm is put together on Android and how it's put together on iPhone and mobile web. There's certain limitations because it's not like you're getting a push notification. You have to have the site up if it's truly a site. So